good afternoon from Scoonies in Lake Placid, Florida. Welcome back to the Sunshine State Rails, and guess what? Somebody got rid of some hair. I know, I'm sure a lot of you were waiting for that to happen, but here it is. We're in Lake Placid today to follow the U.S. Sugar's Santa Express train that they're doing out of their Lake Placid Historical Depot and running 10-ish miles south. It's an hour round trip from Lake Placid down to about Archbold or just north of Venus, which is also just north of Palmdale. But it's the holiday season, and this is one of those festive trains, so that's what we're out here for, and they're running the 148 steam engine, so we also love to see that. And the reason I'm filming this introduction at the end of the day is so I can tell y'all that if you're ever in Lake Placid, make sure you come to Scoonies, because they have some amazing Italian food. Some of the best I've ever had. Their pizza, actually came here last year when I chased their Christmas train to Lake Placid, and I had some manicotti. Absolutely fantastic. Y'all gotta give this place a visit. Remember, Scoonies, I'm probably not saying that right, but you get the idea. It's just down the road from the Lake Placid Depot, so make sure to stop in here if you're ever up or down this way. And let's get into the video. Today's quick outing would begin around 1 p.m. at the Lake Placid Historical Depot for the, as I mentioned, U.S. Sugar's Santa Express. U.S. Sugar advertised this event for this weekend online, and from what I heard, every single run was completely sold out. All trains were full, and the Sugar Express brand is quickly becoming one of the most known tourist railroads in Florida. By the time we had arrived, there was an antique car convention happening on the depot property, this convention being similar to those held in other historical towns around Florida, such as Plant City. Now, I'm not particularly a car person, but I have to admit there were some very impressive pieces at this day's meet. Now, what could be just as impressive, you might ask? Well, I might say the U.S. Sugar Santa Express, pulling back into the Lake Placid Depot at 1:05 p.m. Coming across Interlake Drive into the Lake Placid Depot, this train would be returning after the 12 p.m. departure from Lake Placid, with an EMD model Jeep 11 number 304 leading the way.
Yeah, give me 5 cars there, 304.
As the families disembark the train, the kids are able to drop off notes for Santa Claus, and people are also able to drop off donations for the Sugar Express. Notes and Christmas lists to Santa Claus are only fitting after disembarking the Santa Express, which the Sugar Express is running as a 1-hour round trip from their Lake Placid Depot south 13 miles and back, on which passengers are able to enjoy a scenic train ride through the northern end of U.S. Sugar's rail system, while Santa Claus visits every car on their trip north and south, all while the passengers eat milk and cookies along the way. It makes for a short but fun weekend getaway for the holiday season. Interesting about today's train is that, contrary to the past, they have 2 new passenger cars in the consist. Visible here, their former Southern Railway stainless steel coach stamped as the Fort Oglethorpe 664, and at the very north end of the consist, they have another new coach stamped as the Lake Okeechobee for the Sugar Express. As the Sugar Express grows and expands their operations, they're renovating and restoring more and more historic passenger cars to put on their consist to run all throughout the sugar fields throughout the year. Per operations manager Scott Ogle, they should have 10 to 12 coaches in their fleet by the time all renovations are complete. On the head of the train for the southward trip would be their 462 type iconic steam locomotive number 148. Most Floridian rail fans are pretty familiar with this locomotive. Restored by US Sugar in April 2020, this locomotive has basically been the corporate face of the Sugar Express ever since their operation started about a year ago. Just as impressive is the amazing shape that US Sugar has been able to keep this locomotive in. Their partner in the restoration, FMW Solutions, can be thanked a lot for that as well. Their funding, collaboration, and steam locomotive expertise can be attributed to much of the reason that this locomotive runs today. With the train laid over here in Lake Placid until the next 2:30 p.m. departure, riders would have the opportunity to explore the historic Lake Placid depot and get some photo opportunities with 148. Crews from both US Sugar and FMW Solutions would prepare 148 for the next run, most notably refilling the water tank so the engine can stay cool. As you can imagine, since steam is the component that drives this locomotive forward, steam can be very hot, and so a lot of water is needed to keep the locomotive boiler cool. Though most of this was said and done by about 2 o'clock, and by then riders had gotten their tickets and were preparing to board for the southbound trip. There were so many passengers on site today that the event stand actually ran out of US Sugar Express flyers. A bit of an inconvenience, but definitely a good sign of business.
Hello there, 148. All the passengers, including myself and Mr. Ruggles, are on board. Train is yours.
As for us though, we'd have to get a head start on the train because Lake Placid traffic lights would be a pain, and once the train started moving, they'd have no stops to make.
148, departing Lake Placid, southbound, out.
Moving just south of town, I'd set up beneath the tracks at the Dasher Road underpass, and very quickly this train's appeal was made clear. We wouldn't have a lot of space to play with because these round excursions are fairly short, but Old State Road 8 would get us ahead of the train for our next shot at Bear Point Lane, and keeping it at this rate, the excursion will be very short.
USSC 148, entering the Palmdale block, southbound out. .148, about 2 miles further after having blown its Lonergan 3-chime whistle throughout most of Highlands County, would come to a stop around milepost AX 905. This is where the crews would switch over to the GP11 at the north end of the consist to pull the train back to Lake Placid. USSC 148, departing milepost 905, northbound out.
Until literally this point, I didn't know where they were going to stop, so their sudden stop on the main caught me off guard, but it came clear pretty quickly what they were up to. And so, just as quickly, back the other way we went.
Sebring block, northbound now.
Back at Bear Point Lane, the Santa Express is now under some beautiful evening sunlight provided by the winter season. Although it was a tad warm today for my liking, it was still a nice day to be out. And all these people must have thought so too, because every single one of them got a ticket to ride this train. Though I'm sure the air conditioning, wind through their hair, and holiday festivities on the train made that decision pretty easy for them. The mid-afternoon traffic would then prevent us from beating the train back to the Lake Placid depot, but we'd pull in not too far behind as people began to disembark the train. Just like the round before them, these folks can drop off notes and Christmas lists for Santa as well as U.S. Sugar donations.
So how was your second ride of the day?
Beautiful.
Beautiful?
Yeah, U.S. Sugar, Sugar Springs, Santa Express. It's a beautiful day out here for a ride. Bright blue skies, beautiful lakes, they're all calm. We could use a little bit of breeze, but it's wonderful.
Yeah. Open the windows.
It's great to stand in the doorways on here.
Right?
A bit of a short run today it would be, but for us this train would end our outing with us going to Scoonies for dinner. And yes, it would end up being our dinner. Although it was a shorter one today, I'd still like to thank U.S. Sugar and the Lake Placid Historical Society for making these holiday events possible. U.S. Sugar and the Sugar Express have plenty more holiday-themed events planned, as well as many other excursions system-wide throughout next year in 2023. For further information on these events, or possibly getting yourself a ticket to ride, check their website at sugarexpress.com. But as the sun dipped lower and lower, we still had some Italian food to eat and an hour-and-a-half drive to make back to the West Coast. I'm still not done with this year's holiday season. I've got one more video planned with some other Floridian stuff that I've shot recently, so be sure to stick around for that. I'd also like to try and get back to U.S. Sugar at some point early next year. But until those videos that I hope that you'll stick around for, this is Kotabeaner in Lake Placid, Florida, and I'll see you on one of those future occasions on the Sunshine State Rails.